Coming up next on the Breadwinning Mums.
And then about 4 months later, she contacted me again and said, I'm well. I've got a psychiatrist. I'm on HRT. I'm looking after myself. And I just want to say thank you because I may not have been here if it wasn't for your book and if it wasn't for you replying to me on social media. So there's a lot of responsibility that comes with it. But then there's also a huge amount of being so proud that I can have that impact. And even if it's just saving one person's life, that's incredible.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Breadwinning Mums podcast. This is a place where we debunk the myths of working mums, cheer each other on, and show the world that you can be a mum and still pursue excellence in your chosen area of expertise. Shelly Horton is a journalist, TV presenter, keynote speaker, founder of the ShellShocked media, and author of I'm Your Peri Godmother. Shelly spoke about growing up in Kingaroy as a curious girl, finding herself in a Veronica Corningstone moment that would launch her career as a TV presenter, and using her perimenopause journey to empower other women and create systemic change in Australia's female health. Enjoy this episode with Shelly Horton. Shelly Horton, welcome to the Breadwinning Mums podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Jane.
Shelly, we met at the FAAA International Women's Day event where you were the keynote speaker, where you spoke about your personal, professional, perimenopausal journey and everything that comes in between. It's so inspiring to hear your story. But before we go into all of that, I'm just going to start with a very simple question. Who are you as a human, Shelly?
As a human is a big question. I think I'm very confident. I'm very driven. I am a self-starter. I've never been handed anything. So I have everything I have achieved through sheer grit. But I'm also loving and happy.
Yeah, love it. What was the young Shelly like? Has she always been that confident, gritty, go-getter person?
I think I've always been a confident child. The difference is I grew up in a very small country town in regional Queensland called Kingaroy, population 5,000. So I had, I think, a fairly exceptional childhood in that it was that old-fashioned, we would go to school, play out in the street, and we'd come home, when the lights turned on kind of thing, covered in like mulberry stains and that sort of thing. So it was quite idyllic.
Yep.
And so I was confident and happy, but I was quite sheltered as well. So when I finished, and I did my entire schooling in Kingaroy. So when I finished year 12 and I went to do my journalism degree in Brisbane, that was the big smoke. So it was kind of quite overwhelming. And I have this very distinct memory. My first day at university, I didn't know what to wear or anything. So I just wore like my Sunday best, which was like a nice floral dress. And everyone else was like in jeans and Levi jeans and Bonds t-shirts kind of thing. And I made friends, and it wasn't until years later that they said to me that they thought I was a mature age student because I was dressed like an old
Ages.
lady. So I think, yeah, I certainly was happy and confident, but I didn't have the street smarts, and I was quite green.
Yeah, excellent. What got you into journalism to start with?
So I was always very good in English, and I loved, performing and acting and all of that sort of thing, but I didn't think that that was a serious career. So it was more that I knew that things like debating I really loved.
Hmm.
And I kind of figured that being on TV is almost acting, but with a degree, so
Yeah, this
it's
serious,
kind
serious
of,
acting.
yeah, it's kind of related. So it was very much when I was growing up, it was, Jana Vent and people like that on 60 Minutes who were my idols. So that's sort of where I channeled my attention. But again, because I was lacking in confidence for the 3 years that I did my journalism degree, I didn't tell anyone that I actually wanted to be in TV because I
Hmm.
didn't think, I was the right look for TV. I didn't, I felt that if you said you wanted to be on TV, you kind of had tickets on yourself.
Yep.
So I really focused on radio, and I did incredibly well in radio. I actually finished in the top five for the radio
Oh,
subjects.
wow.
And because of that, back then, because we're talking 1993, that's how old I am, the top five students were accepted into ABC Radio to do 1 day a week internship for our
Yep.
last 6 months of uni. These days, you'd get paid for it, you'd get credit points, but this was just like a privilege. Um,
Mm.
but you know what? It actually was a privilege, and we got to go and actually work as journalists 1 day a week while still studying. And that ended up really putting me in the right step because I then moved to Melbourne and I got a job with ABC Radio as a crime reporter, which I loved. I
Ah.
I loved true crime before true crime was a thing, and I kind of felt like I was Nancy Drew and I was going to be able to solve all of these crimes. But you learn very quickly when you're dealing with real murders, it doesn't get
Mm.
wrapped up in an hour. It's
No.
it takes a very long time. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was quite a dramatic start to my career because there weren't many female crime reporters then. It
Mm.
was a
Mm.
very, very blokey area. But
Mm.
again, I'm kind of that bite off more than you can chew and chew like crazy kind of gal. So I just threw myself into it and I absolutely loved it.
Wow. What was the first year like being a crime reporter in the male-dominated industry? Was there any particular low moment there that really shaped who you are as a person, as a professional, I should say?
So I think I need to be very careful because I sound like a serial killer myself. But I have seen 7 dead bodies and I've never been traumatized by it. I have
Oh, wow.
been the sort of person who leans in and wants to see
Mm.
more and fascinated, and blood and gore doesn't worry me. That sort of thing really, it wouldn't be, what you used to call, it wasn't a feminine kind of
Yep.
industry, an area to be in, but I didn't care about any of that. So it was
Yep.
just such a fabulous opportunity, and I just was like a big sponge, and I learned as much as I could. But after 4 years of doing it, I do think there is a turning point that you're either going to be a crime reporter for the rest of your life, and that is
Mm.
all you're going to do, or you get to that point of going, I also want to have my life as well, because as you can imagine, the crime round started at 4 a.m. because, murders don't tend to happen 9 to 5. So it was really hard doing that really early shift for a long time. So I had always wanted to work in London, and
Mm.
I think a lot of Aussies sort of have that dream.
Yep.
And so for my 21st birthday, mum and dad bought me a ticket to London. But here's the kicker. it was a one-way ticket. So I think they weren't too concerned about getting rid of me. And they were like,
They
you have
really
to,
love you.
yeah, I love you so much, but you're going to have to earn your way back.
Yeah.
So then it was, yeah, that's when my life changed completely. So
Yeah.
I have had the travel bug through my parents my entire life, and I've been to 53 countries. So I am a traveler, but I really wanted to live in London, but I'd only had 4 years experience and I'd only worked in radio. Like I was just throwing myself in there. And I ended up getting a job at a TV station called Channel One. And Channel One was a 24-hour news station. So that means that there was constant news, the bulletins were nonstop. Now, I had never worked in TV, but journalism is journalism. So I ended up getting a job which was pretty boring in that I was checking spelling and grammar and making sure that the other journalists were out on their stories and that all of the supers that come up on TV were spelt correctly. It was more of an organizational job than actually as a journalist. And then I had been there about I can't remember, it was 6 weeks or maybe 3 months, but it wasn't very long. And the sports presenter came in. Now, he was known as a bit of a party boy, and he had not been to bed. He went out the night before and had not gone to bed. So he came in and his voice was really husky. And so he did his first bulletin, because as you can imagine, like it's every hour. And instead of just being husky, it went
It's gone.
gone, nothing. So no sound would come out.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
boss, Virginia Troussard, turned to me and said, Shelley, did you ever read the news on TV in Australia?
You had our own Burgundy moment.
So I just
Wow.
said,
Yeah. Yeah.
yes, I did. And I could never tell her that I hadn't even been inside a TV station before. So
Yeah.
she's like, great, get down to hair and makeup. You're doing the sport bulletin next hour. So I ran down, and again, I couldn't tell anyone that I'd never done it before. But sport is so hard with all of those names, and I was still, calling soccer, not football.
Going football. Yeah.
All
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was just determined that I would
Yeah.
just grab this opportunity. So I practiced and practiced, and then I got into the studio, and it was a fairly low budget setup. So instead of having an auto cue operator, you actually had an auto cue that was like a foot pedal, like an old sewing machine, and you
Mm-hmm.
controlled your own auto cue. I had never
Wow.
used auto cue before in my life. I
Yeah.
also, my leg was shaking, so
Yeah.
it was shaking on the pedal,
Yeah.
so the auto cue words were shaking. It was an absolute disaster. But I just sat down there with this twinkle in my eye and
Yeah.
just kind of like, strap yourself in, people. We might be in for a bumpy ride. And I just plowed on. Now, the thing was, the sports bulletin only goes for like 4 minutes or something. It's not very
Yeah.
long. But in that 4 minutes, I made four mistakes in pronouncing names, which was very embarrassing and nothing that a professional journalist would do. And then I was just so rushing to get to the end. I was just reading the words. And instead of saying Plymouth, I just read the auto cue and said Plymouth, which
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've ever sounded more Aussie. Plymouth. Anyway, the switchboard lit up with complaints. But they were complaints like, why have we got a convict reading the news? And why is a stupid kangaroo doing the news? There was that sort of thing. Anyway, by
Yeah.
the time I had done that, an actual TV presenter had been called off a story and she came back and she finished the day. So I only did that one bulletin. And then the next day, I get called into the CEO's office and I thought I was going to get sacked because I didn't even have the right working visa. Like I was a millennial before millennials existed. I was a fly by the seat of my pants kind of person. And so I was convinced I was going to get deported back to Australia like a convict. And he said, so you read the news yesterday? And I'm like, yes, it was an emergency. I had to fill in. I was just helping out. And he's like, yeah. He's like, we've had a lot of feedback. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I've heard that it's not great. He's like, no. He's like, listen, it prompted me to actually watch the bulletin and see what happened. And he said, you know how they say some people have that it factor? Well, you've got that, and I'm giving you your own entertainment show. Oh
Wow.
my God. So I had a daily entertainment show in London, and I was, what, 24 or 25? And basically, I was living my dream life. I was on TV. I was working in such a glamorous field, which isn't actually that glamorous because I had to work so hard I could barely, leave my desk.
Enjoy it.
But
Yep,
I
yep.
did get invited to movie premieres and, gig guides and, special performances. So I couldn't afford to buy those tickets on the salary I was on in London. So
Yeah.
my flatmates actually had a roster on the fridge of who was going to be the plus one to the different events that I'd go to. So that's pretty much what changed my life and got me more into that sort of entertainment area. And then after 9 months of doing that and absolutely loving it, but also working almost 7 days a week because my show was on 7 days a week. So I'd have to pre-record things on Friday to run on the weekend. And if I didn't have time to do that, I'd have to go in on the weekend. But I've never been afraid of hard work. So I just did that. And then after 9 months, it wasn't that my show got axed. The entire station closed down. So imagine, Channel 10 just going to black. That's what happened
Yep.
with our
Yep.
station.
Yep.
So, but that in itself was an amazing experience because
Mm.
look, working in the media, I have been sacked a few times. I've had shows axed, like it's a pretty brutal industry. However, when everyone's sacked on the same day, there's none of that survivor guilt or anyone feeling
Yeah.
embarrassed. It's more that everyone supported each other. It was like, you're
Yep.
going to be great. And what they did do, which was so incredible, is they said you have to stay on air for the final 6 weeks before we go to
Mm.
black. However, we will hire extra editors to edit show reels. If you need to go for job interviews, as long as you cover each other's
Mm.
shifts and it's all
Mm.
fine. So I came back to Australia with an incredible show reel and got a job at Channel 9 in Sydney. So I moved to Sydney and I did not know one other person in Sydney. So
That's
I really
amazing.
do live by that motto of bite off more than you can chew and chew like crazy.
Yeah.
And then my career sort of has flourished in Sydney for, the next 25 years or so. And
Yeah.
it's only just been in the last couple of years that I have moved back to my homeland of Queensland and I'm living on the Gold Coast.
Yeah. Awesome. What a journey. Thanks for
Yeah.
taking us through. What was the it factor, do you think?
I think it was that my cheekiness, the fact
Yeah.
that I knew that I was going to stuff up, but rather than let it destroy me, I kind of
Yeah.
wore it as a badge. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that takes a lot of confidence, but also just being brave enough and game enough
Courage.
to go,
Yeah.
I'm going to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Even with a shaky foot on the
Yeah.
pedal and everything.
So the interesting end note to that story is I never told Virginia Troussard ever in the entire 9 months that I was there that I had lied to her. But I went back to London with my husband maybe 5 years ago. So a long time has
Yeah.
passed.
Yeah.
And I caught up with her for dinner and I finally confessed that I had lied. And she punched me in the arm and she called me a bugger. But then she was like, I am so pleased that I am the one who gave you that leg up to get into
Yeah.
TV
Yeah.
because I have just loved watching your career go, from step to step to step.
Yeah.
And she's like, I've been like a proud mother hen watching you from the UK. So that's very
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Amazing. All right. Throughout your career as a reporter, what one thing that stood out as a life-changing moment?
I think it's not really one thing. It's more that you have to be resilient. You
Mm.
have to be ready to bounce back
Mm.
because, as I said, no one goes into journalism looking for a stable career. It doesn't exist. So
Mm.
I worked in radio, then I went to TV, then I went back to Triple J as a newsreader on radio there. And then I got a job in TV at ABC Radio as a health reporter for George Negus Tonight. Then I got convinced to be a gossip columnist in Sydney, which that was not on my bingo list at all, but ended up being one of the most fun jobs I've ever had.
Mm.
And all of these things, I think you just need to always not have just your eggs in one basket. So for
Yep.
me, even when I was working as a gossip columnist, so that was at the Sun Herald, and I was still working 3 mornings a week on Channel 7 doing
Mm.
Koshi's Angels on Sunrise and then a spot on the morning show. And I'd always work one of my weekend days on
Yep.
Weekend Sunrise. So for me, it was just always doing things like that. And then I got headhunted to go back to Channel 9, and I didn't want to do that. Like I was scared of going back to Channel 9. And my husband and my agent both said, look, take the meeting. You can always say no, like just always take the
Yep.
meeting. And I ended up being one of the best things I'd ever done, because I got into Channel 9 and they're like, we want you to do spots on Today Show, Today Extra, Weekend Today. We want you to write for Nine Honey. And then, scooped me up. And next thing you know, Nine Honey is doing the Talking Marriage show, which was the after party for Married at First Sight. I did podcasting with them. So it ended up being an incredible opportunity. And I've now been at Nine for 10 years. But it doesn't mean that it's not still brutal. So I was working on Married at First Sight for 8 years, either doing the TV show after Married at First Sight called Talking Married, or doing the podcast, or doing a show for Nine Now, all of that for 8 years.
Yep.
And
Yep.
then this year, I didn't even get an email saying I wasn't doing it. They just went with someone else.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. How's that? Because I'm not on staff. I'm a freelancer. So
Yep.
it's
Wow.
for an industry that
It's
works in
brutal.
communication, it is
Yeah.
brutal.
Mm.
And I guess it's one of those things though where of course I still get upset, because that's 3 months work that I was kind of counting on. But then I've also just finished, I didn't watch Maths this year because, trust me, after 8 years of watching it and having to know everyone and interview everyone, I was done. So
Yep.
it was nice that I could just, watch little bits and pieces this year. But it was an awful season. And I'm like, you know what? I've dodged a bullet. So
Yep. Yep.
it
Yep.
all kind of, works out. And I had also lost my job at Nine Honey 2 years ago. So I was still doing the TV stuff, but it's just like you're spinning plates,
Yep.
spinning plates. Now, if
Yep.
I hadn't lost the Nine Honey job, which was 2 days a week, so that was substantial, I
Mm.
wouldn't have had time to write my book. So
Mm.
for me, I'm always shape shifting. I'm always, moving
Yep.
around. So I think that even though it is a negative of the industry and it can be seen as a low point to a lot of people, for me, I just see myself as agile.
Yep.
There's no way. I mean, my poor father, who was a school teacher his entire career, he
Mm.
used to have heart palpitations with, the way I would chop and change with my jobs. And
Yep.
then after, the first 5 years or so, he's like, look, I'm not going to worry about you anymore. You're a cat. You land on your feet. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just a different generation in
Yep.
that he's very much one job for life. But having said
Yep.
that, my brother he's had 2 jobs in his entire life. He's been with his
Oh,
present
wow.
employer for, I think, yeah, it'd be nearly 30 years. So,
Couple of
yeah,
decades. Yep.
I kind of feel that, this is the breadwinning mums chat. And even though I'm child free by choice, it's so interesting to me that my brother and I are so
Yep.
different. Like, I don't need that, consistency. He is stable, married, 2 kids, like and also
You can see the
he's
life
very
path.
shy
Yeah.
and humble, and I'm like, "Rah!" So I'm like, for those mums out there going, it is not nature nurture, it is just how you come out, I came out with jazz hands.
That's interesting. Actually, I do believe that you're the perfect guest for the Breadwinning Mums podcast because one of the reasons why I started with this podcast is because the sheer amount of juggling that you have to do, right, as a
Mm,
working parent. But it sounds like you have the equivalent of the juggling of several working parents.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
how is it that you do what you do so well, Shelley? How are you able to manage all of the conflicting demands in your life with so much grace, but also openness to just roll with the
Mm.
punches and go with the flow?
I think I only go with the flow now. I think I used to resist it.
Mm.
And when I started my business, ShellShocked Media, this is our 11th year. My husband and I
Oh.
do it because he does camera and sound, and I do presenting. And we teach people how to present on camera or how to, be effective public speakers, that sort of thing. And on top of that, he does sound for A Current Affair and the rugby and all of that sort of thing, and I do my spots on Channel 9 and I do emceeing, and so we have a core business, but we also have other things that we grab onto. So I think when our first couple of years of running our own business, I was at point of burnout a
Mm.
number of times.
Mm.
And I know that that's very normal. And I can see why most businesses fail in the first year because it is so hard and you're learning so much so quickly. However, what I have learned, and this was also part of, going through perimenopause and writing my book, I now have what I call 0 days. So I need at least one day. Well, I say one day a week. It's sometimes one day a fortnight. Sometimes it's just a couple of hours, but I just need to recharge.
Mhm.
And for me, it can be, playing with I've got two rescue dogs, so playing with the dogs, watching trashy TV, whatever, is filling my cup up. But I've even realized that I can't catch up with friends on a 0 day because even
Mm.
that's expending too much energy. I
Yep.
just need to get my battery back up. And
Yep.
now that I do that whenever I can, I realize I'm a nicer person. I handle stress better. I'm a nicer wife. Everything is just handled better when I am rested. Now,
Mm.
I've got girlfriends who've got, toddlers and I've got some who've got, just grade 1, grade 2 kind of kids. And they're like, a 0 day is impossible for a mom, Shelley. They get really mad at me. So one of them has described her 0 day is 0 in, 0 out. That means no kids can come and visit and no sending kids out to sport, to play dates, whatever. It's like we just have it
Yep.
one day where it's the
Yep.
family unit and we play board games and we do stuff like that where it is a decompressed day. So
Yep.
I guess you have to like adapt it to whatever suits you. But for
Yep.
me, that's how I can keep juggling so much at once.
Yeah. Interesting. How do you maintain connection, or how do you yeah, not just maintain, I guess, but nurture connection with your husband amongst all of the juggling
Mm.
that you do?
Sometimes it's really hard. I'll be really
Yeah.
honest. Like
Yeah.
sometimes we can act a bit like employees rather than husband and wife.
Yes. 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 Yeah.
But we're working towards the same goal, and we try and do 2 international holidays a year, which kind of derailed with COVID, but we're getting back there. And then what we do is every new country that we visit, we renew our vows. And it
Oh.
doesn't mean we do a whole, wedding.
Yep.
We just
Yep.
have the vows that we've written on our phone and we
Yep.
find a beautiful sunset or a beautiful setting and we
Yep.
say our vows to each other just to remind us, that we're in this together and the reason that we chose each other. And we've been married for this is our 11th year and we have now done our vows in I think, and Darren knows this better than me, I think 23 countries. So we're
Oh,
doing all
wow.
right with getting those ticking
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
uh, off the list.
Yeah.
So that's something that's really important to us. And I think, yeah, if you do have an argument about work, it has to stay as a work argument. It can't be,
Yep. Bleed into your personal
yeah, and
lives.
we're
Yeah.
we're very good that, we're very
Mm.
normal in that of course we have blow ups. They're not very often, but when we do, we are quick to resolve them and talk them out so that nothing festers.
Yeah, amazing. What a beautiful ritual to continue to choose each
Yeah.
other twice a year,
Yeah, it
no
is nice.
less.
It's really nice. And it's just something that um and it was Darren's idea. He's the
Yeah.
romantic one, you know. So it's
Oh,
actually really
beautiful.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah, and it sounds like you both complement each other as well, both in your, respective careers and also personally.
Well, he says that he's the workhorse and I'm the show pony. That's kind of how it works. He
Yeah,
likes to be
yeah,
behind the scenes and
yeah,
I like to be out the front.
yeah. Excellent. So, as someone who was born with jazz hands,
Yeah.
have you had to rethink about the concept of confidence, not just as a professional, but also just as a person, as a human?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, perimenopause. So any of those mums listening, let me warn you. From, age 40, start preparing yourself. So when I was 45 was when my perimenopause symptoms hit me. And I'd never heard the word perimenopause before. So, it was back in 2020. I was knocked to the ground. And for the first time in my life, I got depression. So it was perimenopausal depression, which is very, very common. One in three
Hmm.
women will actually get perimenopausal depression. And if you have had postnatal depression, it's almost 100% will get you. So,
Hmm.
not to scare women, but to forewarn them. So, if
Hmm.
you know that your hormones affect your mood, then you need to be really hyper vigilant about taking care of yourself during perimenopause. Unfortunately, I did not. And I had never had mental health issues before. So, I didn't know how to candle that I was crying once a day. I wanted to quit my job. I was having days where I couldn't get out of bed. Like it was so textbook depression,
Yeah.
but when you're in it, it's so hard to see your way out of it. And because I am a performer, I could still go into Channel 9 and do my, debating on air with Ben Fordham for 20 minutes, but it would take so much out of me that I would then drive home in tears and have to go to bed for the rest of the day. So I think that sort of thing, I had to really relearn my confidence because when you have something like that where it feels like your body is not your own, your brain is not your own, when I'm so used to firing very, very quickly and I had to almost give myself permission to do a control alt delete reset and build myself
Hmm.
back up again. And
Hmm.
that was a really hard thing to do. And it was also really hard considering that I teach people how to be confident.
Hmm.
So I felt like an absolute fraud that
Yeah.
I wasn't feeling confident. I was faking it, but I was teaching people how to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was a massive crisis there for a year or so. But now that I'm on HRT and I'm made the lifestyle changes, like walking every day, you'll see me every day. I'm out there walking, and that is not to lose weight. I don't think that is ever a
Hmm.
great goal. It's
Hmm.
to keep my head in the right space. So for
Yeah.
me, I you often see it on Instagram as like going for a stupid walk for my stupid mental health, but it works. So
Yeah. Yeah.
particularly living on the Gold Coast, I get to walk along the beach with my husband and my dogs. Like it's such an idyllic setting.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's important to know that even though I was from childhood very confident, I've certainly had things that have knocked me to the floor and I've had to rebuild myself and pick myself back up. But I think confidence is a muscle that you learn to flex and you've just got to remember to put the work in to get your confidence back.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank
Mhm.
you for sharing. What a journey.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to even be aware that you were depressed?
Well, unfortunately, a long time because GPs are not very educated about perimenopause. So my first symptom was heart palpitations, which is
Okay.
very common, which I thought was anxiety. No, it was
Yeah.
my hormones. I also felt hotter than normal, not traditional hot flushes, just felt hotter.
Mm.
And then this depression, and then incredibly heavy bleeding. So when I went to a GP. And this is where I have to confess that I'm a bit of a tight ass and I go to bulk billing centers. I didn't have my own GP. I think if you have your own GP, then you've got that consistency and they would probably recognize the changes in you.
Yep.
Um, but this doctor looked at me and just said, "Oh, with those symptoms and the bleeding, it could be cancer." I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" So then, of course, I spiraled and I had to go and have internal ultrasounds and all of that done. And then when I went back for the result, she's like, "Great news, you haven't got cancer. You're just not managing your stress well. So maybe take up a hobby." Oh my God.
The same doctor?
Same doctor. And
Wow.
so because of that, and because I grew up in country Queensland where doctors are gods and you don't question them, um,
Yep.
I didn't actually seek help again for another
Yep.
6 months. So it was nearly a year where my symptoms just
Yeah.
got worse and worse and worse and worse. And it was again, my incredible husband, Darren, I came home from Channel 9 in floods of tears. And I just said to him, I can't do it anymore. I can't fake it anymore. I want to quit my job. And he sat me down and he said, "I don't think there's anything wrong with you, but I do think there's something wrong with the chemicals in your brain. So why don't we
Mm.
go and see someone together?"
Mm.
And that was the most beautiful way that
Mm.
anyone could have put it. So we did. We went and saw a GP together, and she was educated about perimenopause because she was just like, "Oh, this is just perimenopause. I'll slap you
Mm.
on some HRT and give you an antidepressant." Um,
Mm.
that saved my life, but
Mm.
also that lit a fire in my belly
Mm.
of, oh my God, like I
Yep.
consider myself an
Yep.
intelligent, educated woman. How have
Yep.
I not even heard this? How was I so
Yep.
sideswiped? How was I about to give up my career when
Yeah.
I'm the one? I have worked so hard to achieve everything that I have, and I was
Yep.
going to give it all up all because my hormones were going crazy.
Mm.
So instead of being grateful that I was feeling well, I got mad and I went to Parliament because that's what you do if you're Shelly Horton. You go straight to the top. So in 2023, I was part of the very first parliamentary roundtable on menopause. And can you believe 2023 was the first time that menopause had ever been mentioned in Australian Parliament?
Mm.
That's crazy. And the thing I know as a journalist is if they're not talking about it in Parliament, it's not, no policies are going to change, no
Yep.
health is, no, and so part of what we campaigned for was education for GPs. Because the
Mm.
shocking fact is many doctors out there have had less than 1 hour training when it comes to perimenopause and menopause, which is unforgivable when it
Mm.
happens to 100% of women who live long enough and 50% of the
Yep.
population. So we've made some changes with that. There was a Senate inquiry, and the government accepted some of the recommendations. So educating GPs, having more workplaces get education. So that's something that I do. I go into workplaces and teach people about perimenopause and how workplaces can support women. And we also got a really good HRT onto the PBS. So it's
Yay.
half price. Yay.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. Because also, I don't want women to have to go through the symptoms because they can't afford the
Yep.
HRT. And then it was also, we need more clinical trials. We need,
Mm.
a lot more funding put into women's health. So
Mm.
that again was 3 years ago. It's so hard working with the government. You don't get paid to, lobby the
Mm-hmm.
government. It's all done in your own time and they move at a snail's pace. But,
Yep.
I have had been on a couple of meetings with Mark Butler, the health minister, and he has committed to a national awareness campaign, which I think would be incredibly helpful because we just need to take away the taboo and the stigma, and we just need to be educated about it. If you know
Yep.
what's coming, then you can prepare. And
Yep.
my situation was incredibly bad, but some women are, breeze through. So
Yep.
you need to look after both, but we all need to
Yep.
be aware of it. And we need to get to the point where we're not afraid to talk about it because of,
Mm.
of embarrassment or stigma.
Mm. I can see the light there, bright, shining really
Ta-da!
brightly on the side, Peri Godmother. So, since writing the book, I'm Your Peri Godmother,
Mm.
how has your life changed for yourself, but also for your readers? What have you heard?
Yeah, it's been incredible. I never wanted to write a book because I'm a journalist. I'm like, oh, writing is work. So it wasn't something that I dreamt of. If anything, I wanted to do like a documentary or a TV show on it.
Yeah.
But no station would be interested, like it was all too, ooh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yucky
yeah.
women's stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so writing the book, I made sure it was evidence-based. So there it is there. So there is, it is factual. There is clinical studies, there's research, there's references the whole way through it. But it's also my story. So it's a rollicking good read. And there's a lot of swearing in it, which, that's me. I'm a bit of a swear bear. But then I was a little bit sideswiped in that of course, I spoke about my depression and, how bad it got and that I did have very, very dark thoughts. And I did an interview with a current affair about perimenopausal depression and it went everywhere. Like as well as being incredibly high rating on their show, they put it up on their Facebook and I think it's had like 4 million views. And I had women contacting me on social media who were suicidal
Wow.
and reaching out to me, which is amazing, but I didn't have the tools to deal
Yep.
with that.
Yep. Yep.
So luckily, my psychiatrist, Professor Jayshree Kalkani, who I love, um, I had an emergency meeting with her and I was bawling my eyes out. And she
Yep.
was very clear with me in that
Mm.
you are not trained for this.
Mm.
You are helping so many women with your book, but it's not your job to save everyone. What
Yep.
you can do is keep your empathy, but don't feel responsible. So she helped me. So I would respond to these women and about their situation, but then I would also give them Lifeline's number and I would give
Mm.
them the Australasian Menopause Society so they could find a doctor and things like that. And that was quite challenging at the start. Now I'm again match fit, so I'm very empathetic but very action driven.
Mm.
And I had some times where I'm like, I didn't hear back from the women, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I
I'm not
wonder,
sure whether if they,
I'm not sure what
yes.
happened. Like I had
Yeah.
one woman, and of course, because I love my dog so much, she was like, the only reason I'm not killing myself tonight is because I don't want my dog to wake up alone.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, it's going to make me
Yeah.
cry even thinking about it. Um,
Yeah.
So I certainly wrote back to her and gave her advice and all of that sort of thing, and I heard nothing. And then about 4 months later, she contacted me again and said, I'm well. I'm well. I've got a psychiatrist. Oh, I'm so teary. I've got a psychiatrist. I'm on HRT. I'm looking after myself. And I just want to say thank you because I may not have been here if it wasn't for your book and if it wasn't for you replying to me on social media. So there's a lot of responsibility that comes with it, but then there's also a huge amount of being so proud that I can have that impact. And even if it's just saving one person's life, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Whew,
Wow.
I wasn't expecting to cry in this one. Oh my goodness.
Oh, that's
Ah,
amazing. Well, thank you,
mm,
Shelley. Thanks so much for sharing. And I am sure with the reception that I saw at the FAAA International Women's Day, it's just a start, of many more to come.
yes.
And good
And
for
I
you
love it. This is
for,
the thing, like, I
mm.
go and I speak in workplaces and I speak at conferences and things like that. I got to go to New York and speak. So for
Oh,
me, I get this, it's given me this, my pain has become my passion. And
yes.
it again, it's another pivot into an area of my career that I never could have planned or expected, but that I'm so incredibly happy to be in. And my dream is that I end up educating so many people that I do myself out of a job because everyone knows about it. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. And it'll come sooner than you'd think, hopefully.
Hopefully.
Yeah. So, You've had an amazing life. You've gone through different roles over the course of your working life. Currently, you've moved back to Queensland, living in Gold Coast.
Yep.
Um, Co-founded the company that you run with your husband. Also raising two dogs. What
Yeah.
is life for you like right now?
It's really, really good. And it's slowing down, like the
Yeah.
pace. The joyful part of Queensland is it feels like you're on holidays. Even though you're
Mm.
working really hard, we're 4 minutes walk to the beach. So as soon as you get hitting that beach, it feels like you're on holidays. And after 25 years in Sydney, it is hectic there, man. So that frenetic energy that I used to love and thrive
Mm.
on, I now am very happy to dip back
Yeah.
into when I go down for work. But then I get off the plane in Coolangatta and just go, exhale. So
Yeah.
it's a different pace, and I feel like I'm more in control of it. I trust that if something, falls over, like if Channel 9 ring me and say we don't need you anymore after 10 years, I'll be fine. Like
Yeah.
it's one of those things where I'll adapt and pivot and make sure that we're fine. And the other thing I think that's really important is I don't have very many close friends, but those that are close to me are my forever people. Like they
Yeah. Yeah.
are my rock. So I think it's so important to have that. I would much rather have, five close friends than 50 acquaintances.
Yeah. Excellent. If you could give your younger self, let's go back to that Shelley who has left Kingaroy and
Mm.
started the degree in Brisbane, rocked up with a Sunday best dress.
Yeah.
Knowing all of the wealth of knowledge that you know now, what one advice would you give that young Shelley?
It's all going to work out. And hard work does pay off. So I think I always had a really strong work ethic, but I wasn't confident that it was going to work because I felt like everyone who I saw with success had parents who worked in the industry or went to the right private school, all of that sort of thing. And I think just knowing that I didn't have to have that perfect Sydney style upbringing to be successful in Sydney, I'd love to have had a little bit of insider knowledge about that. And I think the other thing is knowing that, and remembering my roots and where I come from. One of my best friends, Magdalena, said to me, "It's nice to be important, but it's important to be nice. So just don't get too big for your boots."
Yeah.
That'd be what I'd say.
Awesome. And one last question that I always ask all guests is, what is your power song?
Well, last year I emceed an event called So Hot Right Now at the Sydney Opera House, and it was all about menopause. And it had some of the best menopause experts from around the world. And we were all in the green room together. And I called it up on my phone and we sang Pink Pony Club at the tops of our voices. Now, let me tell you, they are medical experts and I'm a journalist. We are not singers. So it sounded terrible. But there was just that real camaraderie and it just lit a fire underneath us so that we all went out on stage and performed this incredible half day event and got a standing ovation from the full house. So that was a pretty cool thing. So I think Pink Pony Club's going to stick with me for a long time.
Pink Pony Club. Okay. All right. Shelly Horton, thank you so much for your time. For a little girl who grew up in Kingaroy, who then explored the world, and also able to express yourself to help others. It's been such a pleasure to spend this time with you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Shelly. See you next time. This episode of The Breadwinning Mums was produced by me, Jane Lim, and our theme music was produced by Sam McNally. We recorded this episode on the lens of dark people who have passed their parenting story for generations. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and thank them for caring for country. Connect with us through LinkedIn or Instagram at Breadwinning Mums. Until next time.